Happy Workers' Day. Hello, good morning. Welcome to another exciting edition of Let's Talk Ghana here on Studios 2 Television. It's a holiday edition of the show today, the 1st of May 2023, a day that is set aside to celebrate workers from all around the world, including those here in Ghana. From all of us here at Studios 2 Television to all workers in Ghana, we say a happy Workers' Day. Today on the show, labor groups have maintained their resolve to oppose the government's proposed domestic debt exchange program, which will see pension funds used to help government avoid cash flow challenges for the next couple of years. We hear from key labor leaders on the proposal and whether or not their minds have changed, along with other concerns, as today is Workers' Day. And much later, still on the controversy of Galamsey, the cousin to the president, Gabby, Asare, Otchere, Darko, has sued former Environment, Science and Technology Minister Prof Frimpong Boateng over the content of the explosive 36-page report, which mentions him as one of the key government individuals or persons associated with the ruling party who are inhibiting the fight against Galamsey. We'll hear from him, plus some more for you here on Let's Talk Ghana, where we put Ghana first in all of our conversations. Stay with me. We're back shortly. Welcome back to Let's Talk Ghana here on Studios 2 Television. It airs every Monday, Wednesdays and Fridays here on Studios 2 Television on YouTube as well as on Facebook. Today is Workers' Day. Special mention to my colleagues here at Studios 2 Television who continue to ensure that we bring you different programs. Marge, Bra Richardo, like we like to call him, and the other guys behind who you don't get to see, we celebrate you today as part of Workers' Day. Let's delve into the conversations, shall we? And as today being Workers' Day, we're putting the matters of labor first. And the conversation has been raging since December of 2022 over the inclusion of pension funds in government domestic debt exchange program. That came up, and then there was an MOU which was entered between government and organized labor. The various labor groups, talk of Trades Union Congress, the Ghana National Association of Teachers, the National Association of Graduate Teachers, and the likes, including the Civil and Local Government Staff Association of Ghana. They all entered into a memorandum of understanding, as mostly like to call an MOU, to have pension funds exempted from government's domestic debt exchange program. That program ended, and the government went to Washington, D.C. again, seeking to convince the board of the International Monetary Fund to grant Ghana that $3 billion credit facility to shore up our economy and help in putting the economy back on its feet, like has been said quite a number of times by government. But amongst the conversations has been a resurrection of pension funds and its use to, this time, government says, avoid cash flow challenges in the coming years. That's why they want to draw in pension funds. They began to meet the board of trustees of the various pension funds, but labor groups have been meeting. We brought you details where CLOGSAG, the Civil and Local Government Staff Association of Ghana, have been the only group to agree to this new proposal from government. The others are refusing, and they've been refusing quite strongly. We're going to go now and listen to Dr. Nyakuotu, who is the Director of Research for the Trades Union Congress. I spoke to him earlier last week ahead of today, May Day, on concerns for workers. And he also raised, amongst many other things, challenges with payment of government workers on the single spine salary structure, and private workers being paid below the minimum wage. Here is Dr. Nyakuotu in that interaction with myself. Calculated at the end of the month 400 cedis, and yet on the single spine, the basic salary for workers, the least paid worker, is below minimum wage?
In actual fact, the general point is that we have a minimum wage which is very low. Unfortunately, a significant number of workers, both in the public and private sectors, are being paid below the minimum wage. And if the minimum wage is supposed to be a mandatory wage below which nobody should be paid, doing so, or in other words, paying people below the minimum wage is against the law. But unfortunately, we observe it both in the private and public sectors. Yeah.
In terms of the general overlook, because in the conversation, and I'm picking a lot of the things from what you said during your brief remarks, how it affects general productivity in the long run, because as you mentioned, ahead of the Labor Day, the theme is protecting pensions and other things of workers. How does this all play together in terms of the general outlook for the Ghanaian economy?
Okay, so we have an incomes regime which is so low, so unequal. To understand when, if you take, say, a worker earning the minimum wage compared to the cost of living, that worker is not able to self-produce itself. And it actually has a way of diminishing worker performance, effort level, because the pay level is so low that workers have other things to think of rather than concentrating on the work. Of course, our point has always been that if you pay workers well, they are likely to be self-motivated and they are likely to put in more effort to achieve the kind of productivity and performance we all want. And as I indicated in my brief remarks, there's a question of chicken and egg. So you feed the chicken and make sure that it produces the eggs that you want. But if the chicken is so underfed, there's very little you can get from that chicken. And the point is that income levels in Ghana are so low, particularly for the large number of people at the lower ranks of, say, the public sector pay structure. And for such people, there's very little you can expect from them, given the levels of cost of living you have in this country.
Just finally, on the conversations of your pensions and the new proposals from government, we know that you met as groups and the position was one. Has anything changed in the last few weeks leading up to the May Day celebration?
Nothing has changed. So our position is contained in the last press release by organized labor. Nothing has changed. So the MOU signed on 22nd December, which exempt pension funds from the DDEP, still stands.
So that's Dr. Nyakuotu in that interaction with myself speaking first off largely on the payment of less than the minimum wage to workers, not just in the public sector, but also in the private sector. Says that it's worrying, it's illegal, and must stop. And lastly, mentions that their position on the use of pension funds has not changed. I put a similar question to Daniel Afedu. He is the Deputy General Secretary of the Ghana National Association of Teachers, and he was quite clear, amongst many other things, that government even owes them in certain areas, has not finished paying, and so cannot proceed to want to use pension funds in this proposed domestic debt exchange program. Here's what he told me. About groups.
No, so last year, December, organized labor had an MOU with government, and the stand of the organized labor is still the same. Just last week at the May Day lunch program on Thursday, organized labor reiterated its position that we are not going to be part of the debt restructuring program, and the position of NAT is the same. No, NAT is a key member of organized labor, and our position is the same. It hasn't changed. Why are we saying so? We are saying so because already the pensions generally are low. And if you look at the fact that the monies that should be invested for us to get good returns, and you are saying you are going to use it to part of the debt restructuring, we say no. Also, we are also even saying that even the arrears, we are talking about the Ghana Education Service Occupational Pension Scheme is in arrears for several months. It has not been paid. And the little that we have, that we're also investing, and also even investing a lot of the money in government instrument is by law. The Pensions Act itself says that close to over a percentage of the pension fund should be invested in government instrument, notably bonds. So if we have invested the money there, thinking that we are going to get some good return for our members who are going to pension, going on pension, and want to get it involved in this debt restructuring, we are saying no. And the position is still the same. It has not changed.
So that's the position on the pensions. Let's talk some other matters. Has to do with education as well. And yesterday, the school feeding caterers announced a nationwide strike. And for you as teachers who take care of these children, particularly at basic education, it more often than not has a toll in one way or the other on attendance and productivity for you as teachers. Your thoughts on this position and the deadlock that has been reached?
Yeah, so I have not followed that much, but last week I saw a news item that Ashanti region caterers were on strike. And following the news, the teachers in the school were not happy because the students were not coming to school because they didn't have. And they said some of them, they come, they have to leave to the house to go and eat. Some also would not come at all because they said they couldn't have money to feed. So it's a big issue. Anything that affects teaching and learning, affects students coming to school as teachers, we are concerned because it's going to affect productivity. So we can only appeal to those who are involved of this matter to quickly look into the issues to ensure that, because it has been there for some time and it has brought relief to some of those parents. They are aware that their children, when they go to school, they will get food to eat. And for that matter, they want them to go. Now they go and there's no food. So it's going to bring a lot of, I don't want to go talk about the quality of food, the quantity of food, no matter what it is. Once the food was not going and people are complaining, then it means it is serving some purpose. So whatever the deadlock has been, I believe it is, I'm listening to the news this morning, it's about two things. One is about the monies that are in arrears, and the second is about the value, the amount that is being paid. They are asking for increment. So we want to appeal that the school feeding secretariat and the leadership of the caterers should sit at table and quickly resolve the matter so that the student, because when the schools went on break for 1 week, it was resumed. We have some friends in some other part of the country where when the students go home, it's very difficult to get them back to school. So once they come to school and they are not fed and they go back, even if you resume, it will be very difficult to get the student back. So we're only appealing, they should try as much as possible to quickly sit at the table and get this matter resolved so that the student will continue. In the meantime, we also appeal to parents also to ensure that their students, when they are going to school, at least they help them as they find solution to the problem. Thank you. Thank you.
That's Daniel Afedu. He is the Deputy General Secretary of the Ghana National Association of Teachers, speaking to me there as well in relation to this matter. And he also touched on the school feeding concerns and low turnout in schools. We're going for a short break here on Let's Talk Ghana. When we return to the controversial subject that continues to remain in the media space, Galamsey. There's a suit that's been filed against Professor Frimpong Boateng. We get into that when we return after this. This is Let's Talk Ghana, where we put Ghana first in all of our conversations. Stay with us. Welcome back to Let's Talk Ghana here on Studios 2 Television, where we put Ghana first in all of our conversations. We're moving on to another conversation, another subject matter, this time on one topic that has refused to go away, and it shouldn't, Galamsey. Why do I say this? The cousin to the president, Gabby Asare Otchere Darko, who was named as one of the many individuals, both leading in the NPP and in government as inhibiting the fight against illegal mining by Professor Frimpong Boateng in that 36-page damning report, has filed a suit against a respected professor and heart surgeon asking that he be barred from carrying out such messages and other assigns in his name. We're going to put up the suit on your screens now as I go through the suit with you so that you get an understanding as to exactly what Gabby Asare Otchere Darko is demanding. So the suit is going on your screens now, and we're going to take you through it. And it's a writ of summons in the High Court of Ghana. The plaintiff, Gabby Asare Otchere Darko, as you can see on your screens, and then Professor Prof Frimpong Boateng, he's a defendant. And it reads that an action having been commenced against you by the issue of this writ by the above-named plaintiff, Gabby Asare Otchere Darko, you are hereby commanded that within 8 days after service of this writ on you, inclusive of the day of service, you do cause an appearance to be entered for you, Professor Frimpong Boateng, and take notice that in default of your so doing, judgment may be given in your absence without further notice to you, dated this day. And then the claims are sought by Gabby Asare Otchere Darko. That's the crux of the matter, what he is seeking to have the High Court do for him. Now, the sum of 10 million cedis as general damages, including aggravated and or exemplary damages for defamation, for libel uttered by defendants, particularly as follows. What saddened me most, and this is a quote from Professor Frimpong Boateng's 36-page damning report. So that quote reads that what saddened me most was when Gabby Asare Darko called to defend a company that was actively destroying the environment, especially the forests and rivers of Fing in the Apaprama and Korbro Forest Reserve. We were ready to dislodge imperial heritage from Korbro Forest when Mr. Gabby Asare Otchere Darko called to inform me that he was a lawyer of Heritage Imperial Limited, a company that was destroying the Korbro and Apaprim forest reserves, and in the process had also polluted and diverted the course of the River Fing, as can be seen in the satellite images below. I informed the president that the behavior of Mr. Gabby Asare Otchere Darko, and he promised to deal with it. I was expecting people such as Gabby, Captain Koda, and others like them who knew the president better and certainly had his interests and success at heart to support the fight against illegal mining. I was horrified to receive a telephone call from Mr. Otchere Darko telling me he was a legal advisor to Mr. Donald Ntia and his Imperial Heritage Mining Company, and that the company should be allowed to work in the Korbro and Apaprama forest reserves. You called to tell me that your client had a valid mining license and all necessary permits. I told you that Heritage Imperial Company Limited did not possess documents permitting it to undertake active mining. That notwithstanding, though, through your intervention, the Chinese who were arrested were released by the task force. So that's one. He's seeking 10 million cedis from the court or from Professor Frimpong Boateng over this, and then an apology and retraction of the words complained of and particularized supra, and perpetual injunction restraining the defendant, whether by himself, a servant, agent, or assigns from repeating similar or other defamatory words against the plaintiff. So those are the details as seen from the suit filed by Gabby Asare Otchere Darko against Professor Frimpong Boateng. There will be no comment from us at this time, as this has become a subject of a legal conversation, and so we will not comment on this. We're just going to give you a soundbite, first off, of Gabby when he first responded, and it's a really short soundbite, when he first responded to Professor Frimpong Boateng and these claims. Take a listen to what Gabby said when the report became public, was leaked by journalists in the country.
It even tells you how weak the minister's understanding of his position is. If what I did was illegitimate, why don't you take the right action? He's going to report me to the minister as if he's a teacher and the president is a master, and I'm what? A school prefect, and I've done something wrong. I mean, what kind of silliness is this? That he reported me to the president. For the president to do what?
So that's Gabby Asare Otchere Darko there, and like I mentioned, there'll be no comments, but judge for yourself, listeners, what you make of all of the things that we've been seeing in the last few weeks following the emergence of this report. Another subject matter on this Galamsey has been the mining at the president's residence at Gabby in the eastern region. Journalists were based there and it was proven that there was no mining based on the pictures and videos. But there's been conversations as to whether or not you can tell from face value alone if mining has happened in a particular area and the land has been reclaimed. I put that question to Engineer Abdullahi Mahama and asked how a situation like that can be disproven or proven. And here is what Engineer Abdullahi Mahama told me when I engaged him on this particular subject matter.
Well, reclamation of land in different forms. In construction, when you are doing reclamation, first and foremost, when you go to win material on a particular land, you would have to know from the client or the owner of the said land what he intends to use the land for after you win the sand. And then whatever information you get from the owner determines the type of reclamation you want to be able to make it an agro base, or you're going to make it a reclamation land for construction.
Right.
So that is mostly what happens. But when you get to the mining, you mostly have to store the topsoil is piled and kept until construction or the operations of the mining is completed, and then you bring in the material and compact them in various layers, and then you bring in the topsoil back to make sure that at least you green the place for subsequent usage.
Right.
But depending on the activity and the method used in the mining, you may, at the end of the day, contaminate all the underground water when you do not provide adequate resistance or resilience for the storage of what we call the tailings. The tailings are the residue of the material, the sand and the oil. I mean, the chemical that is used to actually refine or separate the two materials. That is the
Right.
normal sand away from the mineral that is being mined.
Right.
And so if you don't do the tailing down to actually withhold the chemical, you, no matter how good you reclaim the land, you would have this contamination that may contaminate river bodies which are close by, or lakes or ponds.
Right.
Now, when you want
the subject,
to know
the
about,
subject of controversy has been the
Yes.
president area and
Yes.
whether
Yes. So
or not it can be proven
what
easily.
you have to do with that one to ascertain whether the land has been claimed or not, you can do what we call the trial pits. And in trial pit, you have to identify the set location where you suspect that there was reclaimed land, reclamation done. And when you dig in to actually log in to get the soil profile, any other immediate land will give you a distinction between the two soil profile, and that will let you know the depth at which excavation was done for the mining, and then the volume of material that has been replaced at the said location to reclaim. Because you definitely, when you do an undisturbed land, you do the pitching, you will be able to log in and know the various soil strata. But with the reclamation, because you are now bringing a borrowed material, you will not have the existing nature of the land.
Right.
So you can compare two immediate lands, one which has been dug for a mineral, and then one that has not been done. So the soil profile is the basic way to get the distinction between the two.
So
and the
simply
other thing
put,
is that you can take a sample. You can take a sample from the said location, and then you run a test on the water that will come up from the soil from the CSIR to be able to get the extent of contamination or the other new material has been brought to the said location for replacement.
So to simply put, the place will have to be dug up again for all of this to be ascertained.
No, you have to do what we call logging. So you log the said land, and then you compare to the immediate land that has not been disturbed, like disturbed sample and non-disturbed sample.
Right then.
These are all the things that you can do to get, to be able to substantiate whether indeed the place has been mined. So these are just basic engineering things that we can be done within a short time to get to ascertain the variety or the otherwise of the claims that are coming up.
That's Engineer Abdullahi Mahama speaking to us there. And you're listening, we're so live here on Let's Talk Ghana, where we put Ghana first in all of our conversation. We're going to end with the Ghana Water Company Limited. That statement, they've issued a statement on Saturday, was it Friday? Friday, where they, amongst other things, announced that the Weija Dam is full and that they are going to begin spillage. They in fact began spillage on Saturday, and it's begun to have or take a toll on some of the residents living along the dam area, Tetegu and the likes. Well, Stanley Mate is the director of corporate communications. He's been speaking and says that the residents are refusing to move away. And even though they have nothing else to do but to spill. Let's listen to Stanley Mate.
We are still monitoring the area. NADMO is there, and the Municipal Assembly has also been formed, so they are also there. So assemblymen, the chiefs, and everybody has been informed, and everybody is on the lookout to ensure that everything goes very well. Now we're expecting the District Assembly to dredge the estuary where the water, the Denso River enters the sea, that we can have easy flow. We are also expecting that the some structures or the structures that are impeding the flow of the river, especially especially the unauthorized ones, must be demolished so that the water can flow smoothly into the sea. So we are monitoring the situation. It is not the best now, but we are still monitoring. We expect that those living in the area will also evacuate the place because we are still getting more inflows into the dam, which means that with time we'll be opening more gates and more water will be coming out.
That's Stanley Mate. He's the director of corporate communications for the Ghana Water Company Limited. That's our show for you today, the holiday edition, the May Day edition of Let's Talk Ghana here on Studios 2 Television, where we put Ghana first in all of our conversations. From all of us here, we say Happy Workers' Day to all workers in Ghana. I am Eric Mawina Egbeta. A pleasure to come your way as always. Return on Wednesday with a much more feisty edition of the show. Do have a good day.
Studios 2 TV. The truth is here in your eyes.